been busy.
Much needed, having more volunteers.
It is.
Keep
Yeah.
us safe.
Thank you.
It's been raining.
That is a positive thing for sure.
Yes. Well, cool. I guess I'll go ahead and gotta do some pictures, even though we haven't approved it yet, but it's gonna come around, but we can do that.
Can we do it now?
Probably. Which, does the council want to move that up right now? Let's move up just to,
Make it official.
yeah, let's make it official. Move up number 5. Where am I at? 5I, isn't it? No, that's the other one.
Appointments, 5C.
5C. Is it okay with council? I moved up to 5C up to right now?
Certainly. And Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion to appoint Daniel Duval and Kenneth Nagle as our new volunteer fire department.
We have a 5C. We have a motion by Joan Smith Freeman.
Council Middleton, I will second the motion.
We have Corey as a second. Okay, I'll do roll call. Is Paul on board?
Oh, are you there?
Paul McCoy, are you on? Supposed to be on. Huh?
I thought it was the workshop first.
Oh. Okay, a little discrepancy there. He might not be on board then. Okay, well then, Joan Smith Freeman,
Aye.
Corey Middleton.
Aye.
Debbie Baird. And I, Dwayne Keg. Awesome. Now we can clap. Thank you for doing it. Appreciate it. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Hope to see your gold rush.
Awesome. Thanks for volunteering.
Welcome, man. Thanks a lot.
Oh, there you go.
So, come on down here. Come on down to with us.
You want to live in there too?
Can we-
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
But Corey's moving around. So.
We may have to, but-
Make him stand by himself.
Fire drill. This is a fire drill. How's it?
Oh, man.
And I'll stand right here because I can see her, so I'm good. I'm good. Heavy, her kind of busy.
My dad was Air Force, so thank you for your service.
That went well.
Yeah, that's good.
Volunteers is excellent.
May I interrupt and ask if anyone wanted to text Paul?
Yeah.
Because I did think the workshop was first.
Yes.
No, we haven't.
He probably, he texted me earlier, just said he was gonna be in the mood.
So I got it. I'll go talk to Reddit. It sounds like he's having a hard time with the sound.
Okay,
Yeah, we fixed it. We had the microphones muted, so they're now unmuted.
Is he well now? He said
No.
he had 5 days.
so he's gonna get tested tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well then we'll move on. While he's waiting on that. Okay, when general public comment, citizens participating is welcome to invite into the city council meetings. Time is reserved for each regular meeting for those in the audience who wish to address the city council on items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda. The city requests that the person addressing the city council refrain from making personal, slanderous, profane, and disruptive remarks. Public comments not intended as a question and answer period or conversations with the council or city staff. Council members, when recognized by the mayor, may ask questions of the presenter, but no action may be taken by the council during the public comment section of this meeting. Under the Brown Act, the city council is prohibited from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the or posted on the agenda. Please speak from the podium, state your name and your address if you wish to. So limit your remarks to 3 minutes, or actually 5 minutes, it's supposed to say. So is there anybody from the public that has a comment? Yes, Mr. Veal.
Yes, my name is Dusty Veal and I live in Yreka. Is this 5:30 meetings for the old folks so we don't miss our bedtime. Is that- I'm here for a little clarification. At the last meeting, you advertised a agenda item to prepare a motion for a sales tax or property tax measure to fund this swimming pool. And then maybe you can explain that, but then during the motion, when the motion was presented, it was changed to an 8.25% sales tax. And the question is, isn't that a material difference between the two advertised agenda items?
Right, so that one.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Jason Ledbetter, city manager. So currently the sales tax in the city of Yreka is 7.75%.
Right.
So the 0.5% add-on is a total cumulative of 8.25%.
I understand that, but the advertised motion on the fifth meeting was for a property tax.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. So that was the staff generally comes with different options and suggestions. And then council is allowed to create their own motion. And at that point, I'll let council speak to
Well,
that creation.
if it is not determined a material difference, then you're fine. But if it is determined that that is a material difference between the two, I think you would have to re-advertise it. And
So it's not a material difference because there was no approval of putting that on the ballot measure yet. The staff was given direction to prepare that information and come back to council for final approval. So the item has not been brought back yet, but it's not a material difference if they're discussing either a tax initiative or a property assessment initiative, as long as it was on the topic regarding the pool and financing. So that
Okay.
item will be brought
okay,
back as
if
well.
that's the case, that's the case. Also, you, in the motion that it says it's primarily for maintenance for the operation of the swimming pool. But it goes into the general fund. And then, but then you've designed it so that it is primarily for the maintenance of the swimming pool. And when you do that, isn't that directed funds, which means you need a 66 2/3 vote?
So it was actually a combination. That was actually not supposed to be just for, so going to the general funds, like you said, so that is actually a general one. But it was also directed to go to fire safety too. So the fire departments was, the funds are like the last one we did.
Yeah.
It
I
was,
just-
it
just
goes
to
in
make
general
it-
funds, but it
yeah.
goes,
Just to make it sound, if it's on the ballot, that it is clear
yes,
that how those funds are going to be directed.
directed.
If it is clear how those funds are going to be directed, are you sure that that doesn't qualify for a 66 2/3 vote?
So if I may, again, we only got direction to staff, so a final ballot language will have to be brought back to the council for final approval.
Okay.
So that
Alright.
will be addressed.
Okay, well, good. Well, thanks for listening.
Thanks, Dustin. Okay. Any other public comments? Anybody on Zoom or anything, Retta? Okay. All righty then, we will move to the consent agenda. It was brought to our attention on the consent agenda that we need to pull as pull 5H, correct? Is this correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We are missing one of the parcels that is needed on this item. So it'll come back on May 3rd. So if we
Okay.
can pull it right now, that'd be great.
Okay, is that okay with the rest of the council? We pull this? Bring back on the next May
May 3rd.
3rd. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. All righty then, we will do the consent calendar. All matters under the consent agenda are considered routine and non-controversial and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the council wishes to remove an item for discussion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
if I may, I'd like to pull item 5B into the minutes because of some language in here on a motion that I made that I'd like to.
okay.
It's different.
So, yeah, because I have one I need to pull also. So, we will, how about we go? Is there anybody else that needs to pull anything before we? Okay, I have to pull the payments, 5A, because there was actually a payment that was issued to my cousin, which was a gate operator. So I want to make sure that's, and I know it's a cousin, so it doesn't really matter, but he
Oh,
actually
recuse.
rents from me, so it has financial ties, so I have to recuse
I
myself
was
from
gonna
that.
say, does he live with you?
No, I have to recuse myself from that one, so I'm pulling
If I can-
myself from.
If I can make a suggestion, you don't have to pull that from consent agenda, but. you
No,
could-
I'm
two
pulling, I'm
separate
recusing
motions.
myself from that
Okay.
one, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay,
We're not pulling A.
we're pulling B.
B and
Is there any other ones anybody else has any issues with? Okay, well, we'll finish out that, then 5A, approval ratification of payments issued from March 28th, 2022 through April 10th, 2022. Approval of minutes of the regular meeting held April 5th.
I pulled that.
I know, I'm still listing it all. You're pulling it. I'm gonna go through a list all this. We're gonna pull that. I'm gonna recuse myself from that. I'm gonna go through this anyway. That's what I should have done to begin with, and we could have went that way. Approval of minutes for the regular meeting held April 5th, 2022. C, approval of appointment of Kenneth B. Maldy and Daniel F. Duval to the Yreka Fire Department, which we've already approved that one, so that one's done. D, adoption of resolution 2022-13, amending check signatures for Mechanics Bank and Banking Authority. E, adoption of resolution 2022-14, amending local agency investment fund. F, reject all bids for community theater heating and air conditioning upgrade project and rebid the project. Approve. G, approval of the landfill special revenue fund reserve transfer of CalPERS or the CalPERS California Employer Pension Funding Trust annually for the annuitants unfunded actuary liability relating to historical cost and operating the landfill, city landfill. Adoption of class 16 categorical exemption of purchase of APN, which we pulled that one. I, adoption of resolution 2022-15, approving the Yreka Fire Department enter into a grant agreement under the Rural Fire Capacity Program of the Cooperative Forestry Assistance Act of 1978. J, continuation of urgency ordinance number 864 fireworks, continuation of urgency resolution number 2021-51 remote public meetings. I, waive all text readings, all ordinances on the agenda. Ordinances shall be introduced and adopted by title only. So right up, as of right now, we're pulling 5B, and we already approved 5C. So that one's already done. So now, and I said I'm recusing myself from 5A.
5H is being pulled also.
And 5H was being, yes, I'm sorry, 5H was being pulled. 5B is for discussion. So do you want to do that for discussion first and then, no?
No, I asked that we pull 5B and then for review, because it's totally different and I have. So why don't we just pull that and then we'll put it back on the next.
Oh, you want it totally pulled. You don't want to discuss it at all.
Well, we'll discuss it.
At the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I just didn't know if there's some reasoning behind it, but okay, cool. So 5B and 5H are pulled. And then the other one was approved on. So what is the wishes of the council?
It's a little confusing.
Yeah. So 5B and
I'll move that we
5H is pulled.
present as you explained.
And I'll second that
All
motion.
right. Have a motion and a second. We'll go through roll call. Joan Smith Freeman.
Aye.
Corey Middleton.
Aye.
Debbie Baird.
Aye.
And is Paul McCoy on board?
Is he muted? Freda?
Try and unmute the iPhone. I think that's Paul.
Yeah.
Give him a sec. Star 6. There we go.
Jason.
Can you hear me?
There we
Yep.
go.
There you go.
Yeah, you've had me muted and not able to talk at all. So, and then your sound goes in and out, in and out. It's gone for a while and then it's back, then it's gone. It was gone for the first time until after Jerry spoke. Can I ask what has been left out of these,
So
of this motion?
I'll try to clarify it for you there. So 5B has been pulled and 5H has been pulled. And then we went ahead and brought forth the earlier one on 5C, which was appointment of Kenneth Maldy and Daniel Duvall as a volunteer fire department.
Okay, so 5B is in boy.
5B has been pulled because I guess there's some clarification of the minutes that need to be brought back.
What is the clarification needs to be brought back?
So again, if you want to discuss it, we would push it to either new business or to the next meeting, which I think has been requested.
Right.
Well, what is there to discuss? I don't know what there is to discuss, so,
The wording, Paul, I made that motion.
okay, I couldn't hear you at all, so
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, so the point is that the attorney was sitting right next to me, but the motion that I made was different than the wording that was in the minutes. And so I was gonna go over that with the attorney and with anybody else who wants to, and then we would
Bring it back.
review it at the next meeting. I had it all written out. It's out in the car. I don't have it with me right now. So I asked to pull it and then we would review it and vote on it at the next meeting.
So which motion was it? Do we have a full, I don't see a full copy of the minutes in my packet. Do we have a full copy of the minutes?
Should.
Yeah, I think
Should
so.
got set.
Retta, is the full copy of the minutes in there?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the one on the pool, Paul. It's that last one. No,
Which
it
would
is
be
the last
page
one.
31.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's pulled, right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, as of right now, so I just was asking for yay or nay from you, Mr. McCoy.
Well, not knowing what I'm voting on, I guess I'll say yay, but I mean,
Because
Yeah.
we'll be bringing it back at the next meeting,
Right.
May 3rd meeting, we'll be bringing those minutes back. Is that okay?
I guess, I mean, I'll vote yay. I
Okay.
still don't understand why we're tabling something. I'm not quite sure. I don't see anything here worthy of tabling.
And
We're talking about preparing the Siskiyou County November excuse me, 22 general election, a ballot measure proposing 0.05 cents or 5-cent sales tax upward adjustment to 8.25 per dollar general fund, which will be paired with a directory measure to primarily fund assessment, the maintenance and operation of the Yreka Swim Center and Native Park project located on Foothill Drive, and then ad infinitum.
other city parks, necessary fire and other essential city services. I did say all that, but the rest of it is creative. Corey, you seconded the motion. Do you recall?
To me, it looks,
Does
I
it sound
remember
the
it being,
same?
yes, it does to me.
So,
I'm fine with that. I'll vote yay, but also with the caveat, because this has happened before. I'm not saying with Councilman Smith Freeman, but even with me, I think it's best that we look at this stuff. And I know we had talked about it with Steve when he was city manager. I think it's best that we look at this stuff way ahead in advance, so we can let the city manager know, so that can be detailed before we come into the meeting to have to spend time on.
Yeah, Councilmember McCoy, this is the city manager, and yeah, we can definitely just pull this and then come back on the 3rd to approve the minutes and make sure with the city attorney that the language matches what everybody recalls.
right.
Yeah, I also talking about the procedure though.
Yeah.
Mr. City Manager, I'm because I've been guilty of it. I mean, I'll come in and I'll see something. Oh, wait a minute. I've done it to Steve before, I know. Excuse me. But, so that we have all looked at it, and if we don't, because this isn't a complete minutes, this right here looks to me to be a facsimile of what we said, but it's not the complete minutes of the meeting, is what I was asking for, so. That way, we're not having to spend time in the meeting to do this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we definitely need to.
I'm gonna mute, sorry.
closer to make sure we're all familiar with everything.
Right, and Mr. Mayor, the first time I saw this was late, like 5 o'clock on Friday, when Retta showed it to me. So
That's fine.
I didn't get it.
We're bringing it back, so
Okay,
we'll all move on. He said yay, so we're moving on. I recused myself from it, so I'm at that point, so we're done. That was it.
did Debbie vote?
Did I get you?
I don't think we went around.
It's been so confusing.
Okay, let's try this
So-
again. We had a motion and a
We
second.
haven't gone around
Joan
yet.
Smith Freeman,
Aye,
Paul McCoy. Again,
he said aye.
Retta, can you unmute, ask him to unmute again?
good golly.
Probably coughing.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause this. Yesterday, if I didn't have to take Gary to the doctor, I would have been down here.
It just takes him a minute.
Paul,
once
are
he
you
gets
on there
off.
again?
Do you wanna go to me?
He said aye. We heard that.
We did.
We'll go through, make sure again. Mr. Middleton,
Aye.
Debbie Baird,
Aye.
and I recuse myself, so there we have it. Okay, let's try to move on.
Okay.
6A. Information discussion, planning department, housing, community workshop number 2.
Hello,
This one,
and
Juliana.
thank you. And Retta, could you ask to unmute the Plan West partners? Vanessa and Crystal with a K. All right, thank you. So this is going to be our second housing workshop for the housing element update, which is being managed by Plan West Partners, Inc. So our first housing element workshop was in January, late January, early February. We're now bringing this back. We do not have any other additional planning workshops planned or housing workshops planned for this process. Since we have to approve the housing element update on an accelerated process, but there will be more opportunities for input on housing in the future that can be integrated into the land use element. But for the format today, we're going to do a presentation. You have a copy of the slides, and then for members of the public, there are copies of the slides here, as well as larger scale for those who have a difficulty with reading. And then we will open it up for clarifying questions from council, and then hopefully put the discussion questions up, open for public comment, and then return to you guys for open discussion on what you'd like to see in answering those questions. So I'm going to hand it over to Vanessa and her team, and we do have the slides up to share. Vanessa, you'll just have to let us know when you want to move forward on the slides, since we're not able to have you guys share your screen.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having us, everyone. And we are looking forward to hearing council input and public input through this process. So if we could, there we go. They are coming up. So this is workshop number 2. We had one community workshop, and since this is the first time we are in front of the council, we have included some of the basic information and background information to go over again. Just it is good to have that background, and we thought we would go over it briefly again. So next slide, please. And so I am Vanessa Blodgett with Plan West Partners, a principal planner here. And with me tonight, I have Crystal Heaney, one of our senior planners, and Jason Barnes, our GIS analyst. And we have been working with Juliana and the city staff to prepare and compile and analyze all of the data so far. And we'll be working with them to provide programs and recommendations. Coming back to you. Next slide, please. Great. So the purpose is just to go over some housing element basics, talk about the regional housing needs allocation, kind of look at some of the data that we have been analyzing and looking into that makes up the housing needs assessment that's included in the housing element, and an overview of the project schedule and community engagement, and then get into the discussion and looking forward to hearing that input. So next slide, please. Next slide. And so I know the city has been and is launching into their kind of more comprehensive general plan update, which is really exciting. And the housing element is somewhat unique in that updates are required by state law in 8-year cycles, as opposed to the longer 20-year kind of planning term of the rest of the general plan. So this is the 6th cycle housing element that covers 2022 to 2030. And once again, that is prescribed by state law. Next slide, please. So what does a housing element do? An effective housing element provides the necessary conditions for developing and preserving an adequate supply of housing, including housing affordable to all income levels. So we will be and have been conducting kind of an assessment of current housing conditions and then future housing needs based on some of the most recent census information and other demographic and building permit applications and such provided by the city. So we will be identifying opportunities and constraints to housing production in the city, and then establishing the goals, policies, and programs to meet the identified needs. Next slide, please. Great. So the strategies and the programs will be focusing on conserving and improving the existing housing and assisting in providing affordable housing, and then really identifying any potential barriers to housing development and constraints on housing development in the community. And also focus, which is a big statewide focus, on just promoting fair and equal housing opportunities to all community residents. Next slide, please. The contents of the housing element, it includes a needs assessment, so it gets into a lot of data that we have compiled, which we will briefly go over just in excerpts of that today, but it does get into a lot more detail. And then we do a housing sites inventory that looks at vacant and underutilized sites that are designated for housing residential development, both residentially designated sites and other sites for potential mixed use with commercial uses as well. We will be looking at potential constraints to housing development, so both governmental constraints such as permitting and fees, and then also looking at physical site constraints and in terms of flood hazards and fire hazards and constraints like that. And then, as I mentioned, looking at fair housing and really how the city can proactively further fair housing, and then setting the goals, policies, and programs to respond to the identified needs. Next slide, please. So there has been a lot of recent state legislation regarding housing, as I'm sure you are aware, and this is just an example of that. The next slide as well. We don't need to go over all of them, but you know, a lot of different types of issues are addressed here, and safety element updates, affordable housing, accessory dwelling units. Next slide, please. This is just more, you know, some of the additional legislation that has come through in the past 5 to 8 years. And most recently, SB 9 and 10 related to lot splits and allowing duplexes on single family zones. All right, next slide, please. Great. So now we will talk about the regional housing needs allocation, and this is comes from the state, and the city is not required to construct necessarily or develop housing. It is intended to show that the city has the capacity and residentially designated areas to accommodate housing units. And next slide, please. The city's RHNA and the county overall had very low RHNA numbers coming from the state this cycle, which is unusual for the rest of the state. And so Yreka was allocated 2 units. Next slide, please, which is, a substantial decrease from the last cycle. But through our needs assessment and analysis we're doing, we are identifying, that there is need for housing, and, we are looking to identify what the city can do to accommodate that. Next slide, please. So now we will get into just some of our initial housing needs assessment and some of the data that we looked at and compiled. So it includes census information related to population, household incomes, special needs and disabilities, and then housing characteristics and conditions. And then we will be, based on this, identifying kind of some resources and opportunities for that. Next slide, please. So just an overview of population. You're likely familiar with this, but most other cities in the county did have population decreases since the 2000 census, and Yreka had a slight increase in population. And then also something to note is that since 2010, there has been a slight increase in the 25 to 34 age range and a decrease in the 45 to 54 age range. Next slide, please. Oh, there's arrows showing. There you go. This shows the existing housing unit mix. So there are approximately 65% of the housing units in the city are single family residential dwelling units. About 30% are multifamily units and 5% are mobile homes, for a total of 3,706 dwelling units in the city. And so when we talk about housing, cost is a big factor in affordability, and the state sets these income groups based on income levels. And so the household median income is approximately $42,483 for this city. And a household is approximately 2.23 people according to the census. And so this shows that approximately almost 40% of the total households in the city are considered within the low, very low or extremely low income ranges, and make even less than the household median income. Next slide, please. And this is an example of median incomes for different industries and employment sectors within the city. So it also just gives an idea of a lot of the industries and employment employment sectors are below that median income level. Next slide, please. And so when we're looking at income and housing costs, a household paying more than 30% of their income towards housing costs are considered cost burdened. And looking at median home value in the city since 2017, there has been a substantial increase in the past couple years as you know, has happened kind of statewide and countrywide, really. But incomes and employment have not kept up with this. And I even looked today just to see if there had been a change, because this went through December of 2021, and based according to Zillow, you know, Yreka home values have increased by over 18% just in the past year, which is pretty substantial. And next slide, please. And this is an example of, you know, medium. So the last slide went over median home values, and this slide is showing median home sales prices, which have also increased. So to afford a median home priced in October of 2021, you would need an income of 110,000. And that is based on, you know, a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with APR of 5.5% and a 10% down payment. But that is not affordable for a majority of Yreka residents at this point. Next slide, please. So this is just another example of the more data that we are analyzing and including in the needs assessment. This shows almost 60% of the households are owner occupied and 40% are renter occupied. And one thing to note is, of the 60% that are owner occupied, almost 60% of those are over the age of 55. Next slide, please. And as noted before, the senior population has increased slightly overall, but there has been since 2010 to 2019, there was an increase in the 65 to 74 range. And then looking at persons with disabilities, almost 20% of the total population has reported a disability in their household. And all of these things are considerations when we're moving forward to develop policies and programs and how the city can support housing and the needs of the community. Next slide, please. And this information is based on the 2021 county point in time count for homelessness, and did only count, just due to COVID constraints, count sheltered homeless, so homeless individuals who were in shelters. At this time, there was an estimated an additional 200 unsheltered homeless people within the county at this time, and this is county-wide data, so it's not city specific. Next slide, please. So how do we meet these housing needs? And this is one thing we are, looking for input on, but there are a number of tools and programs that will be included in the housing element to help the city do this. And some of them focus on reducing constraints and updating regulations to meet state requirements, providing additional support to existing housing programs, and looking at potentially developing new housing programs, and then identifying, and prioritizing sites where housing could go in the community. And sometimes that does include rezoning sites for higher density to accommodate more units on a site, or increasing permitted residential densities in existing zones. Next slide, please. So far we have, began to compile our kind of key topics that have come up in our discussions with staff and in our analyzing the data that we have so far. And these are, just really to support the needs for all the housing types in the community, and just overall need for for housing at all the income levels and all the different types of housing, diversifying the housing types in the city, including, the need and potential and opportunity to support workforce housing in the community, and then looking at some opportunities for redevelopment of vacant buildings or underutilized sites. Next slide, please. Another part of our needs assessment is really looking at and identifying sites and that are currently designated for residential development that are vacant and or underutilized. So we look at parcel data to do this. And next slide, please. The city did have a preliminary vacant sites analysis prepared earlier this year. So what we are doing is we're taking that and building upon that and looking at prioritizing some of the sites to identify capacity on each of those sites and any additional constraints to development. Next slide, please. And so this is the preliminary sites analysis that the city has that identifies 398 vacant parcels in the city that could accommodate housing, including single family housing up to higher density housing. And what we will be doing is refining this and prioritizing these sites based on proximity to services. So one thing the state really wants to see is identified sites that are close to grocery stores and retail and other professional services, especially for affordable housing and ability to access transit. And then also another consideration is parcel size and then allowable densities. So we will be further refining this based on those criteria. And the next slide is just for example purposes, but kind of the level of detail that we go into looking at these specific sites and the land use and zoning and allowable densities. And then we do take that and come up with a potential realistic capacity for each of these sites, taking into any site-specific constraints, but also access and open space requirements for each of the sites. And then we also look at ability to connect and provide to water and sewer services. Next slide, please. And so looking at our preliminary schedule, we should have circled where we are. So we are down in the middle on the bottom, and workshop number 2 in April. We have been compiling information for the needs assessment, and the city has also been conducting some interviews and additional stakeholder input that we will be incorporating. We have looked at the existing housing programs for effectiveness and how those have been implemented. And then we are going to be compiling all of this information, including the direction we get from the council and input from the community, and preparing draft housing, the policies and programs, and compiling all of that into the draft housing element document. And that will be coming forward to the Planning Commission in June, and then it will go to council in July, and then it gets submitted to HCD for their review, and then it comes back for adoption after HCD's review. Next slide, please. So we have gone over some of this, but I also did want to just reiterate that the city is doing this broader general plan update process, and all of the housing element documents and notices for the workshops are also being posted on that website. So we have been doing the outreach and the community workshops, and now are looking forward to hearing from council and planning commission to move this forward. Next slide, please. Yes, and I think I did just speak to this. So we are compiling the stakeholder input. We are going to be finalizing the sites inventory that I just talked about, and then drafting the programs and the draft document for submittal to HCD. Great, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. On your presentation, it says page number 15, sites analysis. I was under the impression that we didn't have very many parcels or houses available, and it says here you have 398 vacant parcels. And how did you come up with that?
So yeah, so we take a look at compiling aerial data as well as taking all of the building permits that we've completed since the last housing element. Sorry, that was weird. So the other thing too is we're still cleaning this parcel list. So for example, I've sent a quick run through of certain parcels that are within the FHR, the flood hazard reduction zone, that we're trying to purchase for those properties, which would not be suitable for housing because they're in the flood zone. So this will be pared down a little bit, but in terms of available acreage, we do have an extremely large amount of acreage on the periphery of the city that I don't think we've necessarily considered in the past because it hasn't had adequate access to infrastructure. But because we have done such a good job in the last 8 years of getting that infrastructure projects out, removing any bottlenecks, and then also looking at the capacity of our wastewater and water systems, some of these parcels are now eligible for housing.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, good. I hope somebody builds on it.
Yes. Any other questions?
And we are getting Paul back on.
I was just surprised to see that large a number. Yeah.
They can be divided.
They can be divided. Oh, Jackson's, yeah. Up the hill.
And again, even some of these too, we will have some development constraints for because some of these, like the Deer Creek Way, do not have adequate transportation access yet. So some of them may be pulled out for that reason, or we may still consider them as part of the vacant inventory, but earmark them as parcels that may need more investment than others.
More infrastructure.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's good that we have property that is available to be developed. That's kind of exciting news. I didn't know that.
So what's the next step, Juliana?
So we do have some discussion questions for tonight. I think we're just trying to get Paul on just to make sure if he's got any specific clarifying questions, but we were hoping to post those discussion questions up on the screen, and I did email those to you ahead of time. They're going to be on the back page. There's the slides here that we have available, and then open it up for public comment to start. If people have got any questions or public comment on for the discussion tonight, and then move it back to City Council to discuss openly, and I'll take notes while we go through that.
Alrighty, so I guess we'll open up to public comments then.
Yeah, Lorenzo Love, on slide 13, the regional housing need. It says Yreka 2 units. This makes it sound like we only need 2 units in Yreka. How many units do we actually need?
Juliana, I can start that answer, but then you can add anything you want. How do you want to address that? Or
Yeah,
how
if
do
you
wanna move
want to
forward?
go ahead and kind of explain how they come up with that number, that'd be great.
Okay, so those 2 units are given to the city directly from the state, and the state looks at, they have a pretty complex calculation that they do to come up with these regional housing needs allocations. But my understanding is that the Siskiyou County ones, and including the city of Yreka's, were very low this time due to their population projections, which are projecting a overall decrease in population over the next 10 to 20 years for the countywide. And so that they come up with these numbers and give them to the city, and they do it for all the jurisdictions. And so that is from the state, but, you know, we have identified and through this process, and I will be including, you know, the actual kind of what the city sees as the needs.
So this is saying we only need 2 units of housing? That's fantasy.
So this is-
That's to comply with the state, kind of their state standards.
So how many units do we need?
So again, the housing needs assessment just brings up different conditions and trend documents. And then we rely on the regional housing needs assessment to meet state mandates. But what the city council can do is based on public input or based on other objectives they have for the general plan and housing element. You can set your own numbers that you would like to personally achieve. So that's something that we're exploring as well. But in terms of housing planning, there's no magic number that we can point to and say, we need X number of units over 8 years outside of the RENA number that we talked about. But for example, if you wanted to base it off of available job opportunities, again, we talk about there's about 300 to 350 current unmet jobs in the city. And so if you wanted to link it to that, you could. I think that's something we're exploring as part of this process, is how many units do we really need? And because again, the state is assuming we don't need many, but I think from my staff recommendation is I would say that we do need a lot more than that.
Yeah, at least 2 orders of magnitude. This is a fantasy number.
Good afternoon, Sam Ball. I live right here in Yreka. And I don't know what slide it was, but it had the age ranges of all of our homelessness here in Yreka. If we could pull that slide up. It was astonishing to me. I think it said that 55% of our homelessness is between the age of 5 and 12. That to me is depressing. That's very sad.
It's page 25.
Slide 25, page 13 on there.
That should be our #1 priority, in my opinion. I couldn't imagine being 5 to 12 years old and not having a home to live in, bed to sleep in. That's crazy. Other than that, I was wondering if there had been a survey of the amount of jobs available in the city of Yreka. If anybody has reached out to Yrekan businesses to see what their maximum capacity is for employees, and to see if we can correlate that with a need for additional housing units. I think high density housing units is also a priority other than housing our children. The amount of land available was also astonishing to me, and why it hasn't been built on previously. I saw in the slideshow that there were housing constraints, and I'd like to know more about the specifics of the housing constraints and why they were put in place in the first place. I know those answers might not come immediately, but it would be nice to know why those constraints were put in place and what we can do to work around them. So was I right on that? 5 to 12 years old, 55%?
Yes. And that's for Siskiyou County as a whole.
And that, yeah, that's countywide.
Yeah, that's extremely depressing. So has there been a survey done on the available jobs in the city of Yreka or Siskiyou County as a whole? And do you think that would be useful to have that survey in coordinating how many housing units we need to build?
So we do have employment numbers and we can't use those.
Is that useful?
Yeah, again, I think we're in an open kind of discussion on how the city council should move forward in terms of correlating the actual housing need that we have. So again, from the state side, we're only required to do the RENA, but we can set, like I said before, set those personal goals for ourselves. And it could just be a recommendation that you as a member of the public want us to link it to the open jobs that are available. So we could do that.
Sure, it's, okay, that's good to know. Yeah, it's pretty apparent that a lot of Yreka businesses and Siskiyou County businesses as a whole are lacking a labor force. And so by building high density or medium density housing units, we can create a competition among the people to fill those jobs and have less of a strain on Yreka business owners, Siskiyou County business owners, in trying to find a labor force. Those are my comments.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
And Retta, could you go to the discussion question slide? Because there's some question prompts that people can answer if they would like, and that we're kind of looking for today. So if you keep going down, 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 and it's that tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I think Sam had asked a question about the numbers of jobs, and I thought I had heard you or someone say there were over 300 or 350 jobs available in Yreka, not
Yes.
in Siskiyou County, but in Yreka. That's a large number.
Yep, and we do have all of them divided by industry as well, so we do know what kind of jobs they are and have that broken down.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilmember Freeman. That's kind of, normally we do public comment and then at the end, you guys comment, but this is more of an open discussion for you guys to engage as well. So just wanted to let you know that.
Evening, council members. Forget you got Jason Ledbetter. I meant to say planner and city manager, but tried to remember the guy's name, sorry. Again, complex situations to address. In the previous planning meeting that you had recently, there's a couple comments that I made that I was, as you remember, I was hoping for a bigger crowd from council members. I think we're in a desperate situation to accommodate housing for people that can't afford housing. I think we're in a desperate situation as a county to be have a way higher percentage of low income folks than average or upper income. And one of the comments I made was, while we're addressing the emergency in front of us, don't forget to think long term and what it's going to take long term to not necessarily get us out of this situation, but prevent it from happening again. The job statistic that I would like to know is, you made it, one of the slides stated that the average person, or to afford the average house, a person needed to have an income of $110,000 per year. In Yreka and Siskiyou County, how many jobs of $110,000 per year are we going to have to add to the area for the average person to afford a $329,000 house? That's what I would focus on, because once you bring in the middle class economy that can afford to live here, then those folks are going to have high paying jobs or good paying jobs. It's going to change the balance of where we are, and the people that hopefully come in will be dedicated to the community and want to contribute to the community. Because if you don't address that, then I think the battle is almost unattainable. You're going to build houses for people that can't afford houses, and they're not going to be able to afford the houses that you're going to build as cheap as you can. That's the way it's going to go. I've been in construction my whole life. There is no cheap house. There really isn't. I don't think you could build a house in Yreka for under $100 a square foot. Yeah, I just don't see it. So when you talk about the regulations, what regulations are there in place? Try to get a permit someday, try to do a development someday, and you'll quickly figure out the complexity and the expense of what it's going to cost to get us to where we need to be. Good luck. I don't even know where to offer you any help other than I would really focus on what it's going to take to have those good paying jobs. So the people that can, I don't want to say have the education or are qualified for those jobs, but you have to bring in the jobs and the people that are qualified for those jobs in order to balance it out. Doesn't do any good to have $329,000 houses when nobody can afford them.
Absolutely.
So best of luck. Wish I had more to offer.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you can hear that on the microphone, you should be able to unmute yourself on the Zoom call and be able to give public comment. Could you maybe move or lower the participants thing so we could see the discussion questions?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
No, please.
I actually see this has been a great value. Some of the numbers I've questioned a little bit, like 55% of the homeless being from age 5 to 12. That sounds
Yeah. That's
amazing.
I'll have to bring up my actual numbers on that.
Can you
that's
say the
some-
statistic?
something's
Which
not
is
quite right
which
there.
statistic is that one?
The kids, the 5 to 12-year-old
Mhm.
as homeless. So I would like more follow-up on that.
I
if-
can
if
bring
you could.
some
And
numbers.
not that I,
Huh? I'm sorry.
not that I don't appreciate all the work and everything, but boy, that sounds, we should be seeing them all over, seeing them little people all over the place. And I just don't.
Uh-oh.
That's your voice.
Mhm.
Need some water.
Yeah.
So just to clarify for council member Baird, those numbers were pulled from the 2021 point in time count.
Yeah, so like I said, I can bring up some, on our next meeting, I'll bring up everything we have on that.
Because that actually sounds like crisis to me.
Yeah,
And that's
something's
county-wide.
not entered quite correctly there.
And that's county-wide, and it seems to me, I
Yeah, that
heard
is.
that they have a real situation in Tule Lake with a lot of families. I'm not sure that that's the situation in Yreka.
Yeah, so we'll bring that one back.
Pardon?
That's the first time I've heard those numbers for
Yeah.
ages since I've sat here.
Something's not quite right there, that's for sure. I don't have all my reports with me, but I definitely will bring that back next time.
So if I could finish my thought,
Yes.
I apologize for the interruption.
We just don't want you to, that's good.
No,
Yeah,
we're not.
I won't plop on you.
Please don't.
But anyway, my personal opinion, being as no one else is talking, I would like to see our housing match our employment needs, even though they haven't been filled. People aren't going to come unless they can find someplace to live, which, by the way, we were made very much aware of that when we were doing our search for department heads, because we did have a few people interested, and then that waned once they saw the housing market. I also think we need to address how to encourage developers to come here, because ones and twos houses coming up isn't going to take care of business. We need someone who is actually experienced with the background and history to do large scale projects. And I would encourage low to medium income target areas to begin with, and then go to the higher end, because percentage wise, I think our needs for employing people is more of the middle range. And I'm gonna stop now.
Thank you, council member Baird. And so it sounds like you're in agreement with Plan West as far as looking at lower income housing development close to retail and service. Is that accurate? Thank you.
I'm not gonna talk, but I'll nod my head, yes.
Hi, Sarah Springfields with Youth Empowerment SU. Just because it sounded like there was a question about the numbers from the point in time count, it would be my guess that a lot of those children, was it 5 to 11, right, who are identified as homeless would be sheltered, unhoused, right, which is included in the point in time count. So, and those are the groups that are prioritized for motels through the tribe and through the county. So they are experiencing homelessness because they don't have a permanent home, but they're probably currently sleeping in motels. And so that's why we don't see that crisis on the streets.
This is Sarah Collard from the County Health and Human Services, and that's accurate, Sarah. Because of the COVID housing programs that house children, and so that's why that number is so high.
So they're considered homeless even though they're housed.
Well, yeah.
It's just weirdly not working.
I said they're considered homeless even though they're housed.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
They're considered homeless because if the county weren't housing them, they would not be in housing, paying for their housing.
That makes sense. It's not good, but it still makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mr. Stalker, we're just, this is open, man. So we're not gonna time
Okay.
anybody.
Thank you. I mentioned this in the planning meeting, but I think it was 2008. And I was actually on the city council in Etna, and a gentleman in Yreka had this seminar in Yreka called Boomtown. I don't know if anybody remembers this or not.
That book used to be in the city manager's office. I don't know.
Oh, we've discussed it actually.
It's, I'm not saying that the book is the answer to your problems, but the book is an incentive that there's things about Yreka, the location, the I-5 corridor, that I think if you put it all together, might be able to help the situation a little bit. And I guess my point is that there's information out there like this that might help. You know, you guys don't have to recreate the wheel to fix this problem. There's solutions out there, and I just encourage you to maybe look into this a little bit.
Just to follow up on that, Jerry, when we discussed this, it sounded like you had one point with me, and that was based around a definition, I feel
Yes.
like. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, just make sure I don't get anybody shooting arrows at me from the back, please. And I talked about this at the planning meeting, and I don't mean to be insulting in any way, shape, or form. It's kind of more of a reflection on what I got from this book. I grew up in Etna, been around Yreka my whole entire life, and everybody locally knows that Yreka is the Yreka miners and why we're the miners. I find that to be a hard staple to build off of, only because look around. I don't see the mining, I don't see the equipment, I see the local folks that understand what it means, but how do you build an exciting, booming, small community off of that brand? And that's the most important thing in this book, was branding your town with something that is inviting. It's going to bring people in. So you might want to, kind of focus on that a little bit. We just got a grant for $8.5 million for a new park and a city pool. We've got other nice parks, Greenhorn Park. I mentioned previously that back in that era of like 2008, Enjoy Magazine wrote an article about Etna being, I think it was the #2 most appealing place to live in the United States for recreation.
Nice.
Nobody capitalized on that. Nobody. I took this back to the city council in Etna, and they looked at me like I was an alien. I don't know where to go with that, except for there's got to be something to do, not necessarily changing the name, but coming up with something, a brand that makes it really appealing or more inviting. That's it.
Thank you.
Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to add? You have your hand raised still.
No, sorry, that was it.
Okay, thank you. And I think we fixed the unmuting issue, so people should be able to unmute themselves.
Well, while we're waiting, Jerry was talking about mining, and the actual branding around the city of Yreka is the Golden City, which is connected to branding.
Fit the city,
Right.
not just Main Street or minor street areas.
Well,
I'm sorry.
oh, you got
Yeah,
Paul.
there's examples of small towns with this.
So just a really quick note, if you're not at a microphone, nobody can hear you on the Zoom, sorry. And I think Paul had just unmuted.
Right.
Yeah, this is Councilman McCoy. I did have a question about the percentage of developmentally delayed. I believe it was 2%. And can you guys tell us how that was arrived at? Because the state will tell you that they're at 10%. I can tell you that when both my wife and I were in education, we were around 11% in the county. And Shasta County right now is at 8.7. I've not been able to pull up Siskiyou yet, but those are figures the state and the feds have, because we fill them out as educators every year, and they go back every single year to Washington and to Sacramento. So that figure seems low to me. And the reason I worry about that is because when you get into developmentally delayed students, you're talking about a student that is birth through, they're on an IEP, birth through the year that they turn 22, I believe, on their birthday, on their 22nd birthday. Or they can finish out the year. And a lot of those kids do live in supported, what's called supported units, supported housing units. And it is something that there is not enough of in Siskiyou County. And there's certainly not enough of it in my 30 years in education, and my wife's 37 in Yreka. There's just not enough supported housing when we would go to look for it for our students. So I'm just curious how that was arrived at.
So you're looking at the number for the, which level of disability are you looking at?
Developmentally delayed.
So developmentally delayed could mean a number of different terms. So the persons with disabilities that we have listed here, so that first group, the 85 persons in the 5 to 15 range, is based off of the federal and state numbers. So the numbers that you're talking about are the numbers represented there. But what they do is they don't categorize people as developmentally delayed. They divide it between the sensory, physical, mental, and self-care disabilities. So developmentally delayed could fit within the self-care, mental, or physical or sensory, depending on what level they're at. So what they're doing now is subdividing that into a more specific disability label, so that people are able to get basically catered to services, because developmentally delayed could mean a number of different things. So we're trying to be better about understanding people's needs in that category.
When you say they, Juliana, who is they?
I guess I'm not sure which they you mean.
Well, you said they have separated it. They have done this, they have done that.
Oh, the state and feds, the state and federal data deposits through the Census Department.
Well, because the state and feds have a hard and fast guideline on developmental delay. And again, having spent 30 years education, you'd be hard pressed to try and split hairs on them, whether it's for living arrangements, whether it's for educational arrangements. A developmentally delayed person is a developmentally delayed person, and they fit certain categories. So trying to split them or shape them for services isn't necessarily what goes on. And I'm not sure why it would be done in the housing if it's not done in their, in their life coaching and their skill sets that they're taught.
So I guess I think it's just a different in the industries that we're in. So again, education and planning are different in that way. So for planning, it's very important for us to subdivide developmentally delayed into those categories that you see here on slide 24. Because when we provide or accommodate those people, those 4 key areas or 5 key areas as people get older, so like the independent living difficulty, those all mean different things for us and things that we need to accommodate in the housing element. So these are statutory requirements for how we subdivide these for the housing element. And again, you know, we consider different things from education. So you may have experience with, you know, working with individuals on a very, very close basis, but we take them in those groups based off of, like I said, the sensory, the physical and mental, because those have different best practices associated with them for planning.
Yeah, see, it's just the law is very clear, both federal and state, on what developmental delay is. It's not, you know, it doesn't, you know, they don't divide it up into different areas. It's a very clear and a very defined line that has come along since Hubert Humphrey was vice president and the Americans with Disability, not the Americans, but the PL 94-142 first came into law. It's so I mean, there isn't, I don't see a way that we can deviate from that, or have the state and feds feel they can deviate from it when they're the ones that dictate that we are going to follow the specific definition as a society.
Okay.
And so you had what I was referring to was not that slide. You have another slide up there. And it has, I think, developmental delay, physical, I'm trying to think. And then I think it was like 2% or something like that. And
Yeah.
that's what I was actually referring to.
Oh, I think you're talking about the point in time count.
Yes.
Yes.
2% on that one. It says developmental disability.
So I'm not as clear on why the point in time count categorizes them in that category, and I can't speak to that point today, but I can look into how they define that and using that phrase, that term, and get back to you on that.
But it certainly seems like they're specifically pointing out unhoused individuals as 2% with that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that they're pointing out within the count for Siskiyou County that there are 2% of the people who are unhoused in Siskiyou County have a like a registered developmental disability. Again, I
It's
don't.
actually, Juliana, this is Sarah Collard. It's a self-report on the count in time. So those are people that self-identified
Exactly.
as having a
Thank you.
developmental disability.
So
Thank
very few
you.
of them will, so very few when you're given that point in time count will give you those numbers sometimes. So, and a lot of these numbers that this homelessness thing is stating will be just something that we're gathering information on, that they're willing to give us that information on.
Gotcha.
So that number, and if you're out actually doing the survey, you would actually say that some of those are very low numbers on certain categories. But that's only the numbers that we can get with what they're going to tell us. So some of the numbers are going to be lower than what people anticipate. So
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion there, Paul. I was looking at a different slide and different data.
And then above that developmental disability, that only 2%, there's mental disability of 46 people or 21%.
right.
And then chronic health condition, does that mean mental or physical? And that one's 33, which was
Mainly on that, well, it can give you either way, but mainly on chronic health
Physical.
conditions will be physical.
physical.
And we can provide that report to the council just so that we can dive into those definitions a little bit more. I think for tonight, I'd like to bring us back to the overarching
Yeah.
questions around housing, and we can get you some additional data on those specific definitions.
Yeah, some of these numbers, like getting back to the homelessness thing, is just a small picture of what Juliana's talking about. We need to get back to the overall picture and what directions we need to move in on having her move forward on some of these things. Zoning, obviously, housing, what kind of housing, going to the back page, there's some, do we want more apartments? Do we need more low income housing? Do we need more townhomes like she's got listed on here? Tiny homes is something we need to address too. something that's obviously in there. A lot of these things that, as far as getting back to housing, we got to go back to the root of some of this problem is on housing, and what was addressed with Mr. Shocker was talking about, and it's affordable housing is very hard to come by because of a lot of state regulations. And that's what we need to address, is that a lot of these are state regulations, not city regulations that we have to follow. So when you're building a house that's, like you said, you couldn't do it for under $100 a square foot. It's not possible in the state of California. It's just, it's not, huh?
Possible solution.
Yeah.
When you're done.
Yep. And
He
it's
said he has a possible
possible
solution
solution.
to that dilemma.
Good, good. We need them.
As you know, I've kind of looked into the unhoused situation a little bit myself. And a few months ago, I was looking at a piece of property and checking out the zoning, and I came across a conditional use permit called group housing. As far as I could tell in a little bit of research, I couldn't find anywhere where your zoning allowed group housing that wasn't a conditional use permit. And I think if you could ease up on that restriction, multifamily housing is really no different than group housing. Then that might open up the door for an easier process to house some of the unhoused. With the group housing, you go into an existing facility and, remodel it to accommodate, say, 10 people. You cannot build an apartment complex with 10 apartments in it for low income housing. So you have to kind of realize and visualize what is it going to take to accommodate the unhoused, and what do you have available to do that. And I think the group housing could be something that is potentially.
That's excellent point. And I know we can have our planning director comment on conditional use permits and group housing. But those are the actions, regardless of what Juliana has to say here. That's what a city can do, is that they can alleviate some of those conditional uses. We're not going to develop housing, but we can make it easier. So you raise a good point for everybody in the room to understand what our role here is. So I'll let Juliana kind of discuss what you just said.
Yeah, and so to address that directly, one of the things that we've come across is we have an old zoning code, and actually right now it is in violation of state law. So state law dictates that supportive housing, transitional housing, and group homes are use by right in all residential now. So we have not updated our code, but basically the state supersedes our code. So our code is incorrect. So you could do those as a use by right now. But I think you bring up a good point of, if we don't keep up our codes, people may be misinformed and may be easily discouraged. So that's something that we can look into, to making sure that our information is up to date as the state code changes.
I just want to bring that to a bigger attention, that I've gone through the conditional use permit. It's a lot of work and a lot of time. And if you get to the point where we're standing in front of you and it gets denied, then that does scare people away. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something too, we need to, as far as some of the zoning, I think we all need to be educated on some of the zoning. Having this discussion right now that we're having is just basically a first step. Some of us have been on planning commission and it's been a while. So I think as far as some of the zoning, and I think that's something that needs to be brought back on the zoning aspects and what's what and where's that's located at before on some of this, before we can even move forward on how we can say, we need more of this, we need more of this, when a lot of us don't even know what we have available as of now, right? I know there's numbers in here that says we have this available. That doesn't give us an overall view of what we have. It's not saying, this is not saying that over off of the, over by Discovery area or over by, Northridge, that area above the high school, what is that zone and how is that zone and how many houses are in that area we can build? There is a lot of land use that we have out there, absolutely. But there is obviously some sort of restrictions on what we could put on in those areas. You know, whereas another one that hasn't been brought up to yet tonight is, and on this is, there was a statistics on mobile homes. What do we do? You know, do we open up some more mobile home parks? What does that mean? Because there's less restrictions on mobile home parks. And it would be a solution for some of the low income places too. We have some mobile home parks, which we need more. Is that something that we should have more of? Come on down. You might want to get a closer seat, Jerry.
Just really quick before you go up. So I think that's like one of the big things we want to talk about is you set the zoning code. You set those rules. And so if during this process, so one of the things is we will finish housing early, but we will still be working on the land use element, which is what we set the zoning code apart of. So we can explore a lot of zoning options for you in the future. And that's good to know you want to talk about that because we can talk about that for days.
Oh, yeah.
About the different types of codes that are available. And so that is one thing that we can definitely do a study session for you on and do some education on what your options are moving forward. So that's one thing to keep in mind is as part of this update process, we do update the zoning code. So if there is something that is restrictive that comes up, so setbacks can be something that's very restrictive for people who have maybe smaller lots. You can change that. You have that power. And so we can do whatever kind of zoning code you want to do.
That's something, yeah, that definitely.
A little more flexibility.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest problems I think we've had in the past, and what we've gotten tagged for so much is being so restrictive on a lot of our zoning and whatnot, and not being user friendly when it comes to that. As I know I have gotten lots of complaints, I'm sure the rest of council has too, on not being flexible enough. So that's something we want to make sure that we address and move forward on, being able to be more flexible on it and figure out, like you said, setbacks. That is another good point you just brought up, is that's huge. Setbacks, people don't realize how much setbacks you need for to have even put a building or a house on a property, you know. I think it's 8-foot setbacks, isn't it?
It's 20 in residential areas from the front.
From the street, but from the side
Side is 10 minimum,
Okay, so
which
see,
is
there we
a
go.
lot. And then your rear is typically 10.
I thought it was 10 on one and 5 on the other.
Nope, it's 10 straight.
Both.
Yep,
Both
for
sides.
most zones, there are a couple that are a little bit different. So when you get into the commercial side,
Commercial's different though.
commercial, you typically don't have setbacks, and then you rely on fire code and building code to prescribe certain pieces of that. But again, we can take a look at that and analyze that and give you some recommendations based off of flexibility and what you want to achieve. But I don't want to take your time too much, but we can do a whole nother study session on just your zoning code, because there are a lot of options and there have been a lot of changes in the field of planning. So you have what's called a Euclidean zoning, where you go and you do it based off of use. But there are other zoning codes now called performative zoning codes, form-based zoning codes that are much more flexible and may work in this type of environment.
I'd also like to cover some of the grandfather.
Legally
codes.
existing non-conforming uses.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we can, I'll put in a note here that will schedule another study session with you guys similar to this, where you can dig in deep on some of the details and we
Yeah.
can go over zoning.
I'd like that.
It's typically a very dry topic, so I wait for people to ask me about it. I think it's fun, but that's because I'm in this job, and that's like where we can get very creative
Yeah,
and
that's
very
what I look
unique.
at.
So we can do that.
I think that's our biggest boost in being able to offer more to the city, is being able to get creative on that form. It just makes more sense to me. I guess it's the deep roots of what we're here for, so.
And the timing, everything's about timing, right? And the timing is correct, just one small thing, and
Go
it's
ahead.
all yours. I sit on the Housing, Community and Economic Development Policy Committee at the League of California Cities. Right now, last year, this year, the legislators and the governor have loosened up a lot of the zoning requirements because of homelessness. And now they're encouraging all the cities to comply, to build more duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes, to the point where they're actually requiring them. And if we don't have them in our city, we will be penalized for it. So now's the time for us
Oh,
to do that.
absolutely. That's one nice thing that's governor has actually stepped up to the plate and has done, is has made that more. Now, what is it? Go ahead. Actually, Jerry, go ahead. I'm sorry. We keep
Just about
interrupting.
the mobile home park. I know mobile home parks could carry along a little bit of a scary reputation sometimes, but there's one that in town that I could say I represent. And I know they do a first-class job on making sure that they're a first-class facility. In regards to the housing shortage, because of the shortage of mobile home, manufactured home parks or RV parks, I'm not in agreement with it. There's people that stay there monthly, there's people that stay there weekly, and there's people that stay there daily. If you take a monthly space, it's approximately $450 a month. If you take that space and you rent it to somebody nightly, the owner of that facility makes almost 3 times as much off of that site. So to accommodate that, the owners have reserved an area for monthly that the prices will not change, but an area that they have designated for more daily and weekly rentals, they had to raise the price. So if you want a monthly rental site for an RV park right now, ours is $1,000 a month for the site. Yreka RVs is $800. Theirs does not include electrical, ours includes electrical. So people are able to charge $1,000 a month for a little piece of dirt. And I strongly encourage that somehow you promote that, the RV park. I know the people that own the one that I'm talking about would love to put in another facility for overnighters and then turn the one that they have into monthly only. Back to the unhoused again. One time I know the situation in Happy Camp with all the trailers that the tribe had. I called the tribe and asked them if they would sell those trailers or let people use them or rent them, and they have restrictions, obviously. But what a huge thing to have 50 trailers available for low income or intermediate housing. Good idea.
So there is, getting back to the trailer park situation, the county actually had from COVID money, there was actually 12 units, I think, 12 trailers that were they received money for and had out there because of COVID money. The unfortunate thing is because of lack of places to be able to put these trailers in the city limits, most of these trailers were actually outside the city limits. Well, it kind of defeated the purpose of having these trailers because it was designed for people that were experiencing homelessness or on the edge of homelessness, and a lot of these individuals didn't have a vehicle. So having a trailer outside the city limits,
7 miles.
yeah, it made it very difficult for them to be able to utilize those. So that's why I was bringing that up, and maybe it's something, manufactured home parks. I mean, that's something too. Manufactured homes don't have as much restrictions in the state of California. They don't have quite the building codes and everything else on manufactured homes. So that makes it more affordable housing for people too on manufactured homes. So that's something that we need to look at too as a community. Do we open up an area? Is that something we can do for manufactured homes, which would be more affordable for this area?
For zoning, zone an area for that, right?
Yeah, zoning in some type of area for that.
And manufactured homes are a use by right in all residential zones as long as they have a permanent foundation.
As long as they're a permanent foundation, yeah.
Permanent.
Yeah, which that's the only way you can get a bank loan for them anyways, is on a permanent foundation, so.
I can assure you the biggest deterrent and one thing that's going to stop people is the development costs for the infrastructure, the road system and everything else. It's in the millions, and there's not very many people that can put that money out and wait for the return. So I don't know what you're going to do about that. Dang it, I came up here with something else. What were you just talking about?
Manufactured homes.
The manufactured homes. I lost it.
And we can continue to take input after this. Again, this is not the end all be all. We will have several more events as we go through the process.
Yeah, I've mentioned this several times before, a vacancy tax. Add a tax to land and buildings being left empty. That will encourage people to develop these properties. Because as it is now, I don't know why they do this. They have a building, they leave it empty for decades, or I guess they're getting some kind of tax write-off on it. but hit them with extra taxes. Start out as, I don't know, double the property tax or however you want to do it. I know in San Francisco, vacancy taxes are based on linear foot of frontage. And it can go up to $1,000 a linear foot of frontage per year. That might be a little high for here, but something like that would encourage people to actually put this land into use and the empty buildings in use to promote businesses.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I actually think that's worth a discussion
I think
because
so
of
too.
all of the empty first floor retail spaces on Minor Street
Well,
and
and all
throughout.
over city.
Yeah.
The problem is,
That's
we have a lot of out of the area landowners too that don't, really care sometimes as much as we do.
I would like to see that on a discussion in the near future, but I did look up San Francisco. And what I found interesting, Juliana, is that the article I pulled up to research vacancy taxes had a newsreel that was on there discussing over 40,435 vacant buildings, whatever, in the city of San Francisco, when they have all this great need to fill it, and they are purposely being left either unimproved, so they're not habitable, or purposely left vacant for various other reasons. But it was a newsreel that I watched. And I thought, yeah, I can see that happens here quite a bit too. They've got to have more reasons than I'm aware of to keep it vacant, because it's not good for the building either.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let her.
Robin speak,
Robin
she's
speak.
been patiently waiting.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm getting up and down. That's okay. I was going to just answer your questions. First off, I really appreciate that you all are talking about housing, because I've heard from friends of mine who cannot find a place to live. And there are friends that have jobs. They certainly don't make $110,000 a year, which I thought was probably the biggest surprise in mine. I knew it cost a lot. I just didn't realize you had to have that much money. And we don't even come close at 41,000 or 42,000 median income. So I think that, to answer your first bullet, was the biggest aha that I had. I knew we had a problem, but didn't realize kind of how major it is. What should be the city's priorities to address housing needs? I think low income. I mean, that's what we are, guys. And when you talk about low income housing, it's a kind of a nice thing they're putting in that new development on Foothill, because that'll bring more units. And we just need to be really considering kind of creative solutions for doing that. What types of housing would be beneficial? Like I said, low income. And I think getting back to what Dwayne said is making it easy for people. That's the other thing that I've heard out in the, hinterland, that if you make it hard and the zoning's hard and you don't get someone to really walk you through the process and really have like an ombudsman for the developer or something like that. So it's not like them against the city. It's you're working together to solve a problem, and much more work hand in hand, as opposed to, that the city's got to do the regulations. And I think that's the piece and I think you guys are doing that. I mean, I think this is great. So I'm not saying any of you are guilty of that, but and just look at ways for us to be creative and attractive and just a great place to be. I think that's what you had said about earlier. It's just to make this city a really nice place, and that we are really wanting businesses and we want housing and development, as opposed to maybe not. So that's all my 2 cents.
Thank you, Robin. And I think it does go back to that. And so thank you for bringing that back up, is we need to be more user-friendly. As much as we can be user-friendly. If, there's certain, obviously, steps we have to take no matter what in the planning process. People developing any building houses or developing any land or anything like that, but we need to treat them with welcome them with open arms. We need to, if they have some type of glitch that they're coming across of how do we get around this, then we need to be creative with them. Legally we can only do so much. I get that, but we also can be creative with them too and suggest certain ways to help them with the process and building and getting through this process. Because like I said, the state of California doesn't make it easy, but they're trying to make it a little bit easier on some aspects, but they're still never gonna be easy when you have solar and all these other mandates that they're, putting on. It's affordable housing still gets to be challenging.
So I think for the sake of time tonight, because you still have to talk about fireworks and I don't want to take all of Jerry's time, maybe we can close public comment. And then if you guys have any other discussion points to hear from you and give you that point. But one of the things I wanted to let you guys know on Debbie's point about redevelopment. So what we are doing right now is we're creating a list of all of our buildings throughout the city limits. We're looking at the age in which they were built and the age of the most recent building permit pulled, so that we're actually going to be highlighting areas of town that may be prime for redevelopment or some kind of investment to bring those units back up into either compliance or to look at demolishing those buildings and looking at a new development taking its place. Because that's something we've been noticing, at least at the beginning of this year, is that we have received a lot of renter complaints on the condition of housing that we have investigated and found that it does not meet the state requirements for adequate housing units. So we have condemned a number of housing units in the city already. So we're trying to be more proactive about that and highlight different properties and areas that may be prime for some redevelopment dollars. So we do have programming for those types of things. So that'll be something we bring back as part of the general plan process in land use to get input from you on areas that you may want to target for redevelopment, either through providing housing assistance or providing building assistance to basically get those people to fix up those units. Or like I said, or there is a possibility to work with a private or nonprofit contractor who can then take over that unit and either bring it back up or, like I said, demolish and create new housing in its place that's fitting. So that is part of this process as well.
With willing partners though, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And isn't there CDBG money available for that?
Yep, CDBG is one of the largest funders for those programs, and we could be doing a better job of using those programs in a creative way. We've been using them a lot for infrastructure development, which I think has put us in a really good position for infrastructure. But I think there is a lot more that we can be doing in the housing realm.
If I can add on that a little bit, I was on that board and I found that through staff, I was able to determine that it wasn't an issue getting people to apply. It was an issue compelling them to complete their end of the agreement as far as payments went. And it was a lot of babysitting. And that's why staff eventually got into the less than supportive position of wanting to pursue those funds.
Yes. Yeah, and there's definitely ways we can be much better about those programs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Community Development Block Grant.
Sorry, I was
Sorry.
going to mention that. I hate acronyms too.
I know,
It's
I'm
like a
trying to get
different
better.
language, right, Jerry?
It
So-
can be, but
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go for it.
There's multiple nonprofit or partnerships with other entities that pursue these to monitor the funds, to run it through,
Each city has an allotted amount, I think, 250,000.
based on
And
population.
the county has, like double what cities get. And then Great Northern used to do, I don't know if they still do, used to do some community development block grant as well. So yeah, there's a lot of different entities and ways to utilize it, but we just have to educate people on how to use it. And like you say, maybe, who said, have an ombudsman, is that you, Robin? Have somebody that can help walk people through so that they know how to utilize the resources that we have.
So one question too, I know you have on this list, what types of housing do you think was most beneficial for the community? You said you got example, fourplex, apartment, townhomes, tiny homes, cottage developments, and other. So would you like to elaborate on the tiny homes part of it? What kind of, I guess I'm not up on that part of it. What kind of restrictions is there on tiny homes now?
So I know one of the difficulties I've experienced in the past is the California Building Code, but I know that they are making adjustments to that right now to possibly allow smaller square footage units for people to live in. That was one of the concerns. So when you go into the building code, you have to have minimum clearances from, say, a toilet, from a shower, from a sink, And so that ends up leading you to only having an allowable about 500 square feet. It's like 478 something square feet in the building code. Some people may want the 200 square foot unit. I don't know if that's a long-term solution for housing personally. A lot of people in the planning sphere are very weary about 200 square foot homes, whether it's something that people can do in the long term or if it's something that's great when you're 20 for like a year. But again, there is maybe a space for that type of housing. I think really it's a more open-ended question for you of what type of housing you would like to see. So again, we can allow a number of different types. And so it's kind of just open it up.
The reason why I bring up tiny homes is because going back to what we did the tour up in the Road Retreat up in Medford area, and they had the tiny home set up there, and that was for homelessness. So they did their program where they went from the urban campsite to the pallet shelters to the shelter, and then finally the graduation was of these individuals was the tiny homes. And then they'd go to, from the tiny homes, they actually would go to an apartment or something else. Because usually at that point, they graduated to that level. They have a job generally, and then were able to move out. And at the point where they're at these tiny homes, they were actually paying rent and doing service and paying for services and stuff. So that's, I guess that's why I'm bringing that up, is if we have that flexibility. I didn't know where that flexibility is in the planning anymore, because of the state of California. I knew that they could get away with it in Oregon, but I didn't know if we could get away with that here in the state of California. So if that's something that's new that's coming about, that's something we definitely would like to address, not necessarily for long-term housing like you were saying, but for short-term housing to graduate some individuals from homelessness up to another level. That would be zoning wise would be something we'd have to address. And like I said, it's new information for me, so I don't know where we go with that. So it's something I'd like to definitely bring up and see, because it would, if we're down the road planning to do shelters and urban campsite shelters and all these other things for homelessness, then that would be the next level for graduating some of these individuals from homelessness to the next level. So if that's something we need to plan for zoning wise, then I think that's something we need to address then.
That's what I was just gonna say with the tiny houses. If the California ordinance is under, you can't have something under 500 square feet. You could take something smaller into the zoning of maybe an RV park. Something temporary, because a trailer is not 500 square feet.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, my son went through that, helped to build a tiny house. Was 100 square feet on the bottom, and the sleeping loft made it 125, the size of a parking place, if you can imagine living in that. And most cities don't allow it. When they built it, they were up in Portland, somebody's backyard, they got a waiver. But when they went to Chico, it wasn't allowed. And it's not allowed in a lot of places. I don't even know if it's allowed here. Interestingly, it was allowed in the county, but not in the cities. So you're right. That's something we would have to look into for zoning. We would have to have specific.
Well, and then a lot of the tiny homes are on axles anyway, so you can kind of make them to where it's portable and going back to exactly be more of a trailer or mobile home of some sort. Yeah, which different restrictions. Yeah.
Right.
So that's something definitely we need to look into for, like you said, for sure.
There's a need. There's a need.
Yeah, there's definitely a
Affordable
need.
housing. Yeah.
Just more affordable housing. Maybe, getting back to, I definitely want to express, getting back to what was talked about earlier. It's we can have all this zoning and have all this that we want, but if we need to bring in some new industry in this area, that's what I talked about from day one when I started running for city council. Is this is something we need back in Yreka again, is more industry. That's what's going to be able to build the houses when we zone all these places. If we don't have the people making the adequate money, then we can have all the zoning we want, but no one's going to build. So that's primary. We need to look into that. That's whole other issue, obviously, but
yeah. Oh no, that's easy. Corey had his hand up for a little bit.
That's good. As somebody who's in the profession, is what I see every day, is we would have a lot of housing open up if we had more 62 and over complexes, because we have a lot of people who are transitioning out of their homes that want to transition out of their homes because the yard's too big, maintenance,
Right.
but they're staying put and they don't want to, but they like the condos, but of course that's on a hillside with no garage, and that's not a good place for a senior citizen. The Oak Ridge mobile parks, they're selling like hotcakes and they're older units, and they're selling for like 50,000 for an older unit. So
Really?
there's a huge demand for, because we do have a huge population of 62 and over. So if we open some of that housing, it's going to open up more housing, and
Yeah.
because they're going to go into their next transition, and they're wanting to, but they're staying put. I've a few people said, gosh, I want to leave my house, but there's nowhere for me to go. And the Roe Valley has gotten so expensive that they're 55 and older parks. I was looking at our realtor up there, and they sent me a friend who sent me something, and I think it was $279,000 for this manufactured home, brand new, because we're rebuilding all their parks because they burned down.
Right.
And there were quite a few of them, and so they can't afford that. People who used to go over to the Roe Valley who'd sell their homes here or what have you to go in those parks. If we had the opportunity to get some of those projects going, it would open up more houses for single family, families or whatever, because they are looking to transition out and go down to downsizing, just like Dusty Beals subdivision off Lane Street, 0 lot. Something like that again would be very popular here. So that's finding that builder to be able to do it. So some like the condos, senior manufactured home, 55 and older park, or some type of project like that would be ideal, because I see that request.
Yeah, smaller homes
Daily.
especially, because like you said, a lot of the aging community don't want the responsibility of lawns and
Yeah.
everything else that go along with it, but live in an area that can have.
And they want to stay here, so
yeah.
they're just staying in their
I
house.
know where they live.
And it would open up some of the housing. Oh, that's a very good point.
That was honestly, when I got the housing needs assessment, that was one of the statistics that I found very fascinating for this community, is that out of all of the homeowner occupied, 60% of those people are older, are over the age of 55. Which is, people typically taking up 3 to 4 bedroom houses as empty nesters. So that was a very fascinating statistic for the community.
I have a question, maybe for Juliana or the contractors. So a few years ago, about a third of the town of Weed burned down. And so I certainly don't wish that on anybody, but they had to rebuild, almost half their town. And a lot of those were the smaller houses. And I was just curious if anyone had done the research and talked to them, how did they replace that element of their community? How did they bring it back from a catastrophe like a fire? Because I think one thing that we have missing here seems to be the developers.
Yes.
We don't have people that build affordable housing up here. And I know that many of the people in Weed can't afford, the $300,000 home. So maybe we could follow up with the people in Weed and find out how they handled it and if they have any suggestions for us.
Yeah, and there's a lot of research that's been done into that subsection area because of all of the fires that have hit California. So there's actually a lot more robust solutions to that. And one of the ways they were able to afford that is one, homeowners insurance. But the other thing too is every city has what's called a LHMP, which is a local hazard mitigation plan. And when you have those adopted for your community, you're eligible for FEMA funding that actually can replace housing and build additional housing and community facilities. And so that is one of the ways they were able to capitalize off of the Bulls fire, was applying for those federal funds through FEMA, State California Office of Emergency Services, which is Cal OES. And so there's a lot of research in that, and we can provide information for that as well. Yeah.
And we did adopt a fire mitigation plan.
Yes.
The county, yeah.
Yep. The city did also.
Yes. Is any more comments from the public? Then I'll just close it down to the public unless there's more comments. Yes, come on up.
When you mentioning the fires, as a homeowner, in my neighborhood, there's a duplex. And due to the fires, people coming up from the car fire looking for homes, excuse me, and they can't find anything to rent. And so I know the homeowner that has 3 or 4 duplexes, he raised the rates. He went from 350 for a single part of a duplex to 750 a month. And then he raised his other duplexes to the same amount, if not more. And then the one that had a driveway, he raised it to 750 from 355. The gouging of the rentals has been horrendous in this city. And it's not only that, it's that I know a homeowner that owns 3 or 4 homes to rent. So they decided to raise theirs up to from $850 to $1,025 a month. People were scrambling for rentals. So what to do about the gouging of rentals? I mean, that was ridiculous. And when I talked to the owner of the duplex next to me, he says, I had to do it because everybody else was doing it. Does that make sense? So they gouged these people looking for rentals. And so having talked to, I mean, I've been involved in the community for years, and having talked to some of the people who live here, they had family come up and stay with them. And they said the family members that were in the car fire said they can't stay here because they can't afford the rent. So they're temporarily staying with relatives until they can move on to Oregon or Washington. So it's been horrendous with the rental situation here. People can't afford the rent.
I'm sorry, miss, we've never met, I don't think. Can you just
We
state
haven't.
your name?
I'm Joyce Dakota.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're okay.
So I mean, that is a good point. I mean, I don't know what kind of restrictions are there on.
I think there's laws that prevent increase of rent by a certain percentage.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a certain percentage
Yeah.
of it.
I know for a fact there are, I'm not familiar with them, exactly what they are. And I wanted to comment on something you guys mentioned about trying to focus on what type of housing, and somebody mentioned fourplexes, etc. Go build a fourplex and rent it, and it's going to be $1,000 a month. So you're really going to have to figure out how to get some real cheap housing or get that income up so people can afford what's here.
Jerry's getting his exercise. Thank you, Jerry.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Again, if you have any other comments you want to talk about this, we are still going through the process. We're doing stakeholder interviews right now that'll be included in this. So we are trying to talk to more builders, developers. So if you know anyone who is interested, please let us know. We've had a couple people fall through in terms of not like following up with us for a time to meet with them. So we're focusing on that. But those stakeholder interviews have been really wonderful. We've done a couple of them now, and it's been really good for information gathering from those perspectives. So please let people know. And then the same thing too, we do have our visioning survey open for the general plan still. Please take that. We would like to get more input on that. And then we'll be continually updating our Yreka General Plan 2044.com website with additional workshops. What I've been discovering is people like smaller scale kind of focus group type workshops. So I think we're going to shift the public engagement to do more frequent events for people to meet up with us and talk to us about different topic areas. So we're going to take a little bit more time on the general plan for visioning than I anticipated, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just want to make sure we're getting the word out to everybody and getting the participation that we need.
You're doing great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Is there any
Thank you
other
today.
comments from the council?
Yep.
Great.
And I'd be happy to meet with you guys one-on-one with Jason as well, to go over anything you want to talk about. And then I will work on some zoning stuff for you.
Yeah, that would be great. I think zoning wise, I think, like I said, it'd be very educational for all of us at council, and just because it's been a while since.
I'm glad you didn't say exciting.
Not
Education.
I can make it, it can be exciting.
I think it will be myself.
Okay.
I'm excited about it, but that's me.
I'm kind of excited.
All right, thank you.
Unless there's anything else, do we move on then, Juliana? We're good?
Thank you, Vanessa. And
Yes, thank you,
West.
Vanessa.
Yeah, thank you for the input and thanks for having us tonight.
Great. Then we are on to number 7, old business. A, discussion possible action, fire department, discussion of safety and hazard of fireworks and consideration of limiting sales and or use. Chief Lemus.
Huh?
Yeah,
run the house
for you.
That's not sure. That's not sure. Yep. Oh, hi, Jerry.
Turn this on.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Back in June of, turn myself here so I'm not craning my neck. June of 21, we had discussed at that time how we were going to handle dealing with the fireworks for the 4th of July, which we went through the pros and cons at that time. And as we recall, we were expecting red flag warnings, and that's when the ordinance 864 was instituted and has been in effect ever since, except for a short span there when we had snow on the ground
Yeah.
in New Year's Eve. So which
Yeah.
worked out well. So since that time, I've been keeping an eye on and doing some research on, how we can predict, if you will, which is kind of hard to do, but Mother Nature does a good job of showing us exactly, what's coming. So if you're not paying attention, which I mean, everybody in here is, up to with current events, that it's been dry and we're planning on having it be warmer sooner and drier sooner than normal. We're looking at probably, according to the National Fire Information Coordination Center in Idaho, which we get a lot of our information from. So does CAL FIRE, so does Forest Service and fire agencies throughout the West. That we're looking at, probably a month earlier this year with, intense fire potentially. Well, June will be this year. July will be like what June was last year. So it's just, accelerated a little bit based on now what we've had lately. If we could keep that up every couple of weeks, we probably wouldn't have near the concerns that we're having now. So, in your packet, I included some of that information. If just that one paragraph pretty much says it all, where we're talking about predictive services 4-month weather outlook for North Ops region, which is where we are. They're looking at drier than normal and warmer, and the winds that we get now, for whatever reason, why we get those, based on how the weather's behaving, that dries everything out. The fuels, we go into in fire service, we talk about 1,000-hour fuels and so on and so forth, and those are, not to get too technical, but those are things that we pay attention to, and even all the different categories are already elevated as far as where we're at in terms of fuel dryness. So by the time July gets here, we don't want to wait until that. Unfortunately, last year was a unfortunate thing. We had to wait till, didn't have to, but it just the way it happened. We were seeing red flag warnings continually. So we don't want to wait till the last minute so that folks have a chance to do other fundraising efforts for selling fireworks. So based on all of those, on this outlook and knowledge of what we have for fuels in this area, even though we've done a lot of work on the outskirts of town, we're still looking at severe potential fire danger. And so my recommendation tonight to you as to the city council would be to continue the urgency ordinance 864 and limit, I would say probably ban the use of safe and sane, sale and use of safe and sane fireworks. And that it pains me to do that because that's their, that's their bread and butter. And I spoke with texted with one gentleman tonight or today, and he understands. They were one of the ones that generally sells in town. So, but it kind of segues right into what we've been talking about all night. We need housing. The last thing we need is something to, be a devastating event. Not to say that would happen. It hasn't happened here in the past, but I think it's incumbent on me as the fire chief to advise you and recommend, what I think is prudent, and based on what I'm seeing, it would be the wise thing to do. And hopefully down the road, we can get back to what was normal. Now, having said that,
Whatever normal is. Huh?
Yeah.
whatever normal is, right? I mean, we've been fortunate that, we have had some small, like I said, last year, we have had some small fires that, didn't become a conflagration or, something where it threatened the town. However, you always have to be vigilant and make sure that doesn't present itself. we're still dealing with volunteer fire force for the city of Yreka. We have help available, but if we get assigned to or decide to go to a fire somewhere else at that time, we could have a few people gone, or and it's July, 4th of July's vacation. I can't tell volunteers you have to stay here.
Yeah.
Usually we have enough, but there's always that concern too. We have other agencies that can help, but I look at it in a very realistic way. If you see in your packet too, I hope we got it in there, was City of Mount Shasta is also we're talking with Chief Jonathan Duncan, and we've been sharing ideas, and they're also going to do the same. They're going to allow for the let me try to say display fireworks. So if we have a fireworks show, we can evaluate that for the city of Yreka based on where it was before. That way, at least people have something to celebrate with, and we can do that in a safe manner and have we can control that much better than. And it's not to say that people that have safe and sane fireworks are not being safe. It's just, you have fewer of them, and it's in one local area. So we'd feel the same as that as City of Mount Shasta Fire Chief had indicated that we would entertain, issuing a permit for that, excuse me, for that event, should that come forward, excuse me. So anyway, that's my recommendation, is to stay the course with the ban on safe and sane at this time, and allow a display should that come forward, which it likely will, based on, and then again, I've always conditioned the permit with, if there's for the display, if there's red flag warnings, anything that would constitute concern on my part, we would, cancel it as soon as we could. So, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you have at this time.
Yes, Joe.
Well, I received a phone call today
Mhm.
asking about the Safe and Sane
Mhm.
local nonprofit.
Right.
And they were asking if it's county-wide, if it includes in the county as well as in the city.
I'm not aware of if it's throughout the county. That would probably be a question for the county board. I know that.
Actually, I called the board member
Did you?
and she said that they don't have control over that, which I thought was interesting. So the cities can ban it, but the county cannot. Is that because of CAL FIRE? CAL FIRE controls that?
CAL FIRE can, well, I'm sorry, go ahead. Chief.
No, I was just going to say, to my knowledge, CAL FIRE has jurisdiction over anything other than an incorporated city. So, in other words, City of Mount Shasta, Dunsmuir, they can make their own decisions through ordinance. When they don't have that, I believe either the state fire marshal could also do that too, if it's something that is of concern. I'm probably not, qualified enough or knowledgeable enough to know exactly how that would work, but being in government for a long time, knowing how those things work, I would say that county fire warden, or that would be probably under his purview, that he could say no fireworks, safe and sane. But I haven't spoke with Chief Anzo, and I can definitely do that. But just from the standpoint of City of Yreka, that's my recommendation. And you might see that. You very well could see that throughout the county. I don't know. I know Jonathan Duncan from Mount Shasta Fire Chief. He was looking into that as well.
They already did it? Did they pass it already?
For their city. He was what I was getting at is he was asking about, he was contemplating, whether the county would do it as a whole. Dunsmuir has banned it, right, Juliana? Oh, she left. Dunsmuir banned, I think, permanently, and Mount Shasta doing.
Permanently?
I think we
Right.
did too, didn't we?
I think we did, yeah, I believe it was even before, I think, the Bulls fire.
That's very.
So,
I think we did.
it's very unfortunate, because there's a lot of folks that don't. I enjoy fireworks, to be honest, but watching the show, or when I have grandkids now, and it would be nice, but I think you have to look at the greater good and the potential that's there.
House more than the fireworks.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where we're at. So
Thank
like
you,
I say,
Jerry.
it's moving forward.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for the background information.
So
So to know what other cities are doing.
at this point in time, there's really no, unless there's some other comments or concerns from the council, we don't really need to do anything because we're already doing what we're doing. So.
Yes.
I think we were attempting, Chief Lemos, to bring this to you first and foremost for the sale And so
Yeah.
the folks, the fundraiser folks knew.
Yep.
And so if we just had clarification that you were going to move forward and there would be no sale this summer, that would give them a better understanding not to get in the predicament of ordering without being able to sell. So
Well, that's what happened last year.
As
you know,
permitted.
it Waited until last minute. And then it was very upsetting for some individuals and organizations. Cause that, like you said, that's some of their main money makers and hate to cut them off in last minute like that. So I speak for myself, and I'm not for my only myself, but I think it's the only safe thing we can do for our communities, make sure that we continue what we're doing. And unfortunately, all of us would love to see fireworks and be able to let them off in your backyard. But like I said, I think I enjoy my house more than watching fireworks once a year. So.
in Retta, is it possible to unmute council member McCoy? He's texting me here.
Oh.
It's probably killing it.
Yes, *6, council member McCoy.
No, can you hear me?
Yes,
There you
now we can
go.
hear you.
Yeah, no *6 isn't working for me. I would make the motion to ban all sale of all fireworks in the city of Yreka through December of 2022.
Do we need that?
I don't
Or
think
is
Can
the
we do a
existing?
motion? Is it an?
Let me bring it up. I don't think we do.
If you're gonna talk, if you could use the mic, it does help. I can hear you then.
It is a discussion and possible action, and
Well, I think we need to be clear on it, and I think
You're right.
I think we made a big mistake last year when we waited until June and July to take action. So that's why I would make a motion, whether or not it would get a second, but I would make a motion for banning the sale so that they know right now that they're not going to be able to sell.
and I think since we have the urgency ordinance, the motion could just be to continue.
Continue number 864
Yeah.
emergency ordinance. So that's basically what you're saying, Mr. McCoy, is to continuation of number 864 ordinance we've established.
Yeah, as long as that bans the sale in the city.
Sales, okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
Is that what it was intended?
I think that's what it states anyways, doesn't it?
It's a sale.
Yeah.
Ordinance 864.
Yeah, number 864 already bans that.
In front of me, but that's what I recall. So.
Yeah. Let's bring it up here. Let's.
No, it says it delays the sale
Oh,
and use of fireworks. I'm moving to ban it until 2022.
oh, gotcha.
Through the end of 2022.
To December of 2022, yes. Because I think when you say delay, that gives people a thought that, well, you know what? If it gets really, really wet, they're probably going to let us sell. So we'll go ahead and order now. And then I'm sure they'll let us sell.
Chief, do you
Right, yep,
concur?
So he's right. It says this, it says under this ordinance of the city of Yreka declaring that local emergency and authorizing the delay of the sale and use of fireworks which may create a threat to public safety deemed to be arising from the incidents of the lava fire and setting forth the facts constituting such urgency and finding the ordinance exempt from CEQA. But
Mr. Mayor, Phoenix, Oregon just banned all sale and usage of all fireworks within the city for 1 year.
so I think this is something that, I don't know, we need to discuss with Dawn before we go and ban it. I think it might have to be brought up next time then if we're going to reword it for banning it, correct?
Yeah, I think if we have the intent tonight with the continuation, then we can bring back a
Verbiage.
reworded ordinance after legal review.
I think we'd have to legally.
Okay, then I will remove my motion because it used the word ban.
No, I understand. So I think it's something we're gonna have to bring back then, unfortunately, as banning it, like you said, the sale of, instead of delaying it.
Yeah.
Is that something that rest of council would like to
Yes,
see?
please. I think that's a good idea, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll bring that back, Paul, on the next meeting. The different verbiage on that. Is that okay with you?
Mayor, just
Thank you.
because this will have to get legal review. I cannot guarantee that we'll
That'll
have
be
it on the next meeting, but we'll attempt to get May, but we know the intent within the city is we will continue 864.
Correct.
And so at that point, we're able to notify any fundraisers that they're unable to purchase this year.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Jason. Appreciate that. Okay, is there any other questions on number 7A? Because really the discussion was, we've already okayed number 864 at the very beginning of this meeting, so we are really just was discussion then at this point in time, unless somebody wants to reiterate that. I think we're good.
It was the original intent of Mr. McCoy's motion was ban with an end date to the end of this current year,
Correct.
calendar year.
Okay, great. Then we will move on to number 8, city manager staff reports.
So Jason Ledbetter, city manager, report for tonight. So I have a number of items just to keep you in the loop on. First and foremost, we have a path forward on the pool grant project. And so we will be looking at the purchase of the 2 parcels on Foothill. We've also crafted a sequence of events to get a design and build RFP or request for proposal out on the street. And so we're working towards those action items now. Staff met with the Siskiyou Economic Development Council on Friday, the 15th. The contract was approved for the design and engineering of the Carnegie Building, which the SEDC is managing that contract. We have slotted a meeting for every other Friday for staff to meet and discuss projects and opportunities with Siskiyou Economic Development Council. We want to maximize that relationship. Have a warming center update. We have 2 different pathways, both that we've discussed here. The concept for the tent and as well as the permanent existing structure. Currently, there's a lot of traction on the tent idea. And so I hope to be back soon in the future here to have more of a plan and possibly an MOU between the county and the council. And my intent is to go into fall with a plan and agreement in place. The planning director, Juliana, who's you guys met with earlier today, she organized a meeting with the local transportation commission director, and we had him here in the council chambers, starting a discussion around a possible roads project in Yreka for 2024. We're going to continue to maximize that relationship. As we know, there's going to be a lot of money flowing in for infrastructure, and we anticipate that money is going to flow into existing grant systems or existing grants instead of creating new grants. A grant that maybe was $250,000 could all of a sudden get an influx of money and be a $4 million opportunity for us. So we're going to look at designing a project. Currently on the docket, we're looking at 4-H campus and ranch lane road project. Public Works currently obviously has a number of projects that they're working on, but I just want to give people an update on 2 specific projects that we don't see at the moment, but there's a lot of administrative work that's gone into these projects. South Oregon will be slated on paper to be completed in July of 2023. And then the Burgess Street sewer, which would also get the road fixed on that street, is slated for completion in October of 2023. So that's exciting news. Next meeting, I plan on bringing the project list on May 3rd to the council. I would like to get the council priorities and then use this info for the department head review process so that each department head goal for the following year matched the goals of the council. So that should be an interesting meeting, May 3rd. There's a number of projects. I know that we're all aware of them, but to see them on paper, it's pretty extraordinary. And I know this is a little bit contentious, but originally the idea from the planning director was to have a joint meeting of the planning commission and the council tonight, and we had been starting closed session at 5:30. Planning commission had gone to 5:30, so we maintained that for tonight. And I've got mixed reviews individually on starting at 5:30, but I am going to bring back an item to have you vote on to consider starting at 5:30 if we don't have closed session, and just get more clarification if closed session is working at 5:30 when we do have closed session. So I'll bring that in May 3rd. Tomorrow, I will be going to the quarterly board meeting for the Friends of the Library at 5 o'clock, just across the street here, across the parking lot. I can see tonight that we may consider canceling our Zoom account and getting a brand new Zoom account, and just seeing there seems to be something not completely working, but we're still working out the bugs with the meetings, with our personnel issues. So, and then ultimately, I just thank Juliana. I know she had to take off. She lives down in Dunsmuir, and I thought it was an incredible public comment. She's done an incredible job with the visioning and getting public participation. And hopefully people see the value with her, because it's an incredible opportunity that we have a professional planner of this caliber in the city of Yreka. And I think through the general plan, with the things that were discussed tonight, this is how we make a decade-long impact in the city of Yreka. So that is all I have tonight, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot. That was good.
Yeah.
A lot of good info. Awesome. You have anybody else wants to, chief? Either one of the chiefs? Okay. Well, then I
We
will
got a
go.
quiet chief in the corner.
I think both the chiefs have had long days.
And more so than me. I feel
Yeah,
I know a lot of what it goes through.
craziness, huh? Say the least. All right, then I will gonna bring it back to the council. Corey? I won't forget Paul. No, I won't.
Paul to go first.
I'm just mixing it up.
Oh, makes sense. I don't know if I have anything. The Lola meeting was interesting. The League of Cities we had the other night. You missed it.
Yep.
But
Wife's birthday.
yeah.
I think I had to.
Hopefully the district attorney can have a town hall, so the citizens of the county and towns can hear what he had to say about just different levels of crime and how the jail is full, and people getting slapped on the wrist, and just different things he's seen in the county as far as the crime goes. And it's, you know, our police officers are working as hard as they can. So it's very educational to hear him go through cases, what comes before him, what he can do and not do. And their hands are tied, but it was, and we know it, Mark has talked to us about it, or Chief, I'm sorry, Chief Gilman, that's not professional of me. But to hear it come from the district attorney's office and what they're facing was alarming, to say the least. But hopefully he will, you know, he's an elected official. Hopefully, you know, he works for the citizens of Siskiyou County. Hopefully he will hold a town hall and kind of offer, you know, the citizens what they're wanting to hear. Maybe they don't want to hear it, but I think a lot of them do. So it was really interesting, I thought, and I'm glad we had him as a guest speaker. I'm on the Friends of the Fair board along with Debbie. I'm the president, actually, got roped into that. But
Excuse me.
I know, but Debbie does a lot of help. So they're getting ready to kick up a lot of the events back at the fairgrounds this year. You know, the fair is one of them. Of course, they're going full swing of the fair. They're having a what are they calling it now? Spring Fest used to be called Mother's Day event or whatever. Spring Fest is 2 or 3 days. They're gonna have music out there. It's in May
6 through 8.
6 or 8. Got it. So that's gonna be good. So it's nice to see a lot of the events. We're back. We also do bartending services, so a lot of the fundraisers are back. People are out there spending money, bidding on desserts and guns and having good food, and everybody's back to fundraising. So it's nice to see the fundraising come back for a lot of these organizations who have not had any funding our fundraising for over 2 years and have seen a lot of other organizations struggle, and ours being one of them by not being able to hold these events. So it was getting really scary for all these nonprofits. So definitely, if you can, get out there and support the nonprofits, these events, support your local town and our communities, and just these different charities, because they're what makes our community. So, and I will end with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Mr. McCoy, Paul?
Yeah, I'll keep mine short. I would like to commend Councilwoman Baird for the wonderful job she did at Lola in updating the rest of the county on what's going on in Yreka. And she did a wonderful job in your absence, Dwayne. I mean, she may want to take over. I don't know. You know. It was quite well spoken. I want to thank the city council for, I want to tell you that I wish I were there and not here. I would much rather be with you people than I would be going through what I'm going now. But, and I want to thank Jason for the wonderful leadership he continues to give in the office. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Joan?
Well, the one thing that Paul didn't mention is Paul and I were in a pool meeting with Robin and Jason and Brett. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. Oh, I mean, I can't sit back. Paul, can you hear me now? Okay. Anyway, we had a pool meeting last Friday to discuss, where we were going and purchase of the lots. And anyway, I thought that was a really good meeting, and Paul called into that as well. Also, I had a Sacramento Valley division, also known as the Northern California division of the League of California Cities, or Cal Cities as they like to call it now, last Monday, not yesterday, but the week before. And they're talking about the next meeting on May 22nd is going to be in Mount Shasta. So I invite you all to come. It won't get any closer unless we have it right here in Yreka, which we've had in the past a few times. Tim Stearns and the staff are working on it. They're going to have it at the Upper Park, inside in the building in Upper Park. And sounds like they're going to have a barbecue, I think, on the 22nd. And then we're going to have speakers from different places. And I think one of the things they're going to be talking about is homeless and the new things that are coming down for that, and some funding. So I think it would be good if we could get everybody there to support Mount Shasta for the meeting. It usually starts right before lunch, and then it goes from 11 to 3, and then they have a tour. I think they're going to do a tour of their museum and their I think they said it's the oldest fish hatchery in the state of California that's right there in Mount Shasta. So they're going to have a tour of that too, which should be really nice. I enjoyed Lola, and yes.
Wait, Becca?
Yes.
Question?
Yes.
Could you please email out the date?
Oh, okay.
And time and location for that?
Okay. As soon as I get that, Charles, Anderson is our, what do they call him? Division manager. So I'll get that from him and forward it out to everybody. So everybody knows, and our staff too. That would be good. Corey, you gave a really good talk about what the DA said, but you forgot to mention the sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
The sheriff was there as well at the Lola. And Lola, Jerry, stands for League of Local Agencies. Used to be the Local League of Cities, but we have a few cities like McLeod and Happy Camp and Hornbrook and Lake Shastina that are not incorporated cities. So we call it the League of Local Agencies, and short is Lola. So, and all the cities in the whole county are invited. And we had about 40, not quite 40 people there, I think, last Wednesday night, and it was in Montague this time. We've had it, we had it here the time before. It was at the Elks. We had it here, and then we get a caterer, and then every city. It's the only time that all the cities get a chance to get together and brag a little bit about what's going on in their communities, or ask for help if they're having something going on that other cities can help them with. And it's good for the city managers to get together, as well as the city council members, and just network, just talk about what's working in our cities. And we got a lot of congratulations on our pool. And a lot of people wanted to talk to us about that.
And Arby's, they were excited at Arby's. They were jealous.
Oh, that's right. That's
The
right.
other cities were jealous we're getting. Arby's.
Especially Dunsmuir. Dunsmuir, Big Dave was jealous that we were getting an Arby's. He goes, wait, what? Like what you said, you're getting an Arby's with real beef? So anyway, yeah.
Brandon Chris was there also.
And Brandon Chris, that's true. We had Supervisor Brandon Chris was there, who represents the Montague area and all the way up and over to Tule Lake. Also, Easter was really nice. My family came up, so I got to spend time with the kids and the grandkids. That's always good for relaxing and decompressing a little bit. And speaking of kids, I don't know how many of you know this, but Lane Street Children's Center just recently sold. And I don't know if you know this, but they've been around for about 40 years, I think. And luckily, they're not going away. It's in a 2-story old Victorian house on Lane Street. And she sold it to her manager. And so it's going to continue on. It's not gonna go away. We're going to celebrate them this weekend. And then the end of this month, the 28th and 29th is going to be the Housing, Community and Economic Development Policy Committee meeting in Sacramento, which I'm going to attend by Zoom. That's the one good thing I think that came out of all of this that we've had, is that I don't have to travel 4 hours to Sacramento if I don't want to, and 4 hours back. So it's good sometimes, but I'm going at this time, because of the timing, I'm going to call in to the Housing, Community and Economic Development Committee. That's my report.
Great, thank you. Deb Baird?
Short and sweet. I went to the Lola meeting as well. It is really nice to catch up on what everybody's doing, but another advantage is they always give us a heads up on what events are happening in each community, which is quite nice. I have a Collier meeting next week in Etna for those who might like to join at the Etna Brewery. And I did have a LAFCO meeting, Local Agency Formation Commission. And they do still have a vacancy for a member at large, if anybody's interested. And we did approve the RFP for Plan West to do the MSR and SOI for the communities in the county as well.
Could you tell us what that stands for?
No. Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence. And basically, to me, I narrow it down to making sure that each community has the services needed to run their community safely, whether it be infrastructure and public, fire and yep. So now I forgot. Oh, the only reason I mentioned it is because Plan West is who is doing our housing elements. So it's kind of nice. I think we will be able to streamline the information they're going to require. And I was really hoping to not have to recreate the wheel over and over again, but, and it looks like we won't have to. And that's all. Thank you. I would recommend that you go to the website and go to county website and then go to LAFCO. And what they normally do is receive a letter from the interested party, and then they do a little bit of a background check. And we meet anywhere from 2 to 4 times a year. However, we're on a good run right now. I think we're going to meet maybe 3 times in a row, but it's at the max, it's once a month. So it's a joint powers authority, and there's no appeals above us, which, oh, okay. Yes.
I forgot it.
Thank you. Thank you.
What'd you forget?
I forgot LTC. So I do represent our council, our city, on the Local Transportation Commission.
I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
exactly.
And that was last Tuesday. Yeah, and right before the meeting, Jason and I met with the city of Montague and Stage and YMCA to arrange, and Emily was also involved in that, and Retta, to arrange for the kids to be transported again this year over to Montague since we don't have a pool. And so it's all organized, and Emily and I will be telling, and Jason, we'll be telling you all about that. It's going to be twice a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays for 7 weeks from June until right before the fair in August. So, and the kids' bus fees, they waived that. We won't have to pay that.
Wow.
And they'll pick them up right in front of the YMCA and drop them off and
Nice.
take them right over to the pool.
Good. That'll be good. Cool. Anything else? Oh, good. Keep it short and sweet. I don't have much to add. I just want to thank everybody, Jason and both our chiefs for being here, and our staff, and everybody, Retta for stepping in on
Yes.
playing this role of. There's a lot to it, and I'm glad you do it because I couldn't do it. So thank you for stepping in
Oh.
and just adding. Oh, jeez. Just want to add that there's a lot of stuff going on in staff level, and Jason's just really stepping up to the plate and getting things done behind the scenes.
Yes.
Getting everybody up to snuff. He's working on some projects that's going to really help our city. He's working on right now one thing, the critical infrastructure safety of our city. So that's going to be down the road. He's working on that to everybody and making the proper adjustments to keep our city safe. And it's going to be through Chief Lemus and everybody else working together on this. It's going to be a huge thing. These guidelines are already out there. A lot of other cities are doing it to keep their cities safe, fire safe and whatnot. And he's working hard to get this done. We thank you guys for working on it because it's much needed to keep our city safe, especially for fire danger.
Right.
And this will be huge once we get this completed. So thank you guys for stepping up and getting things done. Other than that, we finally got some numbers back from homelessness.
Good.
Yeah, so I'll
Yeah.
share with you that one. So I'll bring the literature on that one.
Report. Okay.
So that way I can share with everybody at the city council and the public. So that'll be good. Other than that, that's all I have. We'll keep it short and sweet. You did have something you wanted to add?
Well, I just
Almost.
wanted to let you know, and I'll let you know again, on June 3rd, Friday, June 3rd, since the city of Montague is being so kind and letting us bring our children to
Oh, pool
Montague
party.
before our pool is, they are going to have a fundraiser. It's
Oh, right on.
it's teriyaki chicken, pulled pork, rice, green salad, and rolls. And I bought the first ticket to thank them for allowing our kids to come over
Yeah.
anyway. But tickets are for sale. It's $20 for adults and $10 for kids 6 to 10. And it's going to be over in the Montague Hall. And so I wanted to make sure that all of our staff and all of our city council members know, because they've been so kind. We pay $2.50 a kid. But it's just to help
Yes.
them with, paying their lifeguards and stuff.
Would you like me to put that in my window?
In your window, sure, if you want to.
Oh,
There you go.
another thing I was gonna add regarding fire safety, are we sending something out in our monthly newsletter as far as keep our grasses mowed down and everything? Because right now is when everybody should be mowing things and doing the weeds, because right now it's getting, you said it's great that we're getting this rain, but then that's one of those double-edged swords that we're getting the rain, but it's causing all the weeds to grow tremendously and out of control. And so if they don't get whacked down come May, we're going to be looking at some real problems.
I believe,
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman McCoy, and I can tell you as a citizen of Yreka, I've already gotten that in the mail. I got it about a week and a half ago.
Oh, good.
yeah, code enforcement sent out the mailer about just the weeds and keeping
Good.
the defensible space. But we can certainly, we've already solidified the newsletter that's going to go out quarterly that we do. But the next one would be more in the summertime, and I can work with Chief Lemos on getting a paragraph in there about defensible space.
Yeah, sweet. Great.
I got my weed abatement letter too.
Yeah, I know
Mow your
everybody
lawn.
that gets that freaks out. They're like, what? They're coming down on me. It's like, no, this isn't for everybody.
Mhm.
And it's like, it needs to be, it just needs to be observed for
I
sure.
do have one more question for Mr. Ledbetter, please. What's going on with FHR? Are there meetings planned? Is it on the back burner? What's going on?
Flood hazard reduction.
Yeah, we're currently have the scope of work done for the Linux, what we call the East Linux. So we should see that project kick off, but we also we're working on purchasing. And so the Director of Public Works, we currently have definitely one parcel that we're in negotiation, I guess, or conversation with the county on. And then there's a number of other parcels with private landowners, I believe at least 3 that I am aware of that we're working on trying to secure. But I will put a note to have the Director of Public Works in May give just a summarization of where we stand.
That'd be great. And then on regards to that, what we discussed earlier about the road projects too, if he could give us a list of the priorities and where they fall. There's a little confusion.
It's on Facebook.
Oh, it is now.
Yeah, I saw the map on Facebook.
Oh, good.
The map, yeah, that same map that we looked at
The map
earlier.
ad,
Yeah.
yeah, but we, not a priority list of how they fall.
Oh, we're gonna do the priority list.
And well,
May 3rd.
we might be doing that. Yeah, I wanted to know what his priority list was. Cause that was one of the discussions we had of which one was falling where, because this was brought up from last council meeting when we had all the people wondering when your neck of the woods was getting done. So
Yes.
that's why I still want that known to where we know which ones fall where. So it's like, okay, we know Oregon Street's getting done. We know a certain amount of chip sealing's getting done, but we don't know what order that is.
And Burgess is October of 2023, you said.
Yeah, and it's based around a sewer
July.
project.
I don't know about Campus Ranch Lane and I didn't capture that. but-
Yeah, I didn't catch that either, Jason.
The Campus Ranch Lane is more theoretical at the moment as we finish off a number of projects that we'll see on May 3rd on that list. It's now the time to plan with all this infrastructure money coming through. And so one area that we've looked at that seems to need some work is 4-H and Ranch Lane, and then the connection between on campus as you'll.
Yeah, that connection would be a crucial one, because that's where a lot of individuals get to practice their drifting skills.
Yeah, it's gravel at this
Do
point,
you
I
know what
believe.
drifting skills are?
In a car?
Yeah.
Oh, my.
Oh, yeah, I see it all the time, and they have fun. A lot of the kids have fun taking that corner because it's all dirt. So they hit it, slide sideways and peel out on the pavement.
Look at you being an adult.
Yeah.
But that is just a theoretical. We're attempting to get a plan. We're just starting the conversations with the director of the local transportation commission about funding on that. So.
Perfect. Yeah, that was one of those into the streets that was always made me scratch my head why it was never completed.
Yeah, it was
It
weird.
was,
When they
well,
built the college.
yeah, when they did the.
Mr. Ledbetter?
That was blockaded off at first when they did first built the college. So.
Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering, because that dirt part is not acknowledged as a street. It is not an actual street for the city of Yreka. That's why it's never been paved. It's not in the system. Are we going to go ahead and put it in the system as an actual street and pave it? Or, because there was talk when I first came on council also of just putting up like K-rail or something else there to keep people from driving it.
Yeah, that would be our attempt, is to basically have a project, and then on the completion of that project, and these are very future discussions. So
Yeah.
don't get, this is nothing. We're in the planning stages to see if grant money would be available to us. But yeah, that would be the intention, is that would go into our road inventory at that point, if we were able to get the funding for that.
That'd be wonderful, because I think the city, I mean, I know in my 3.5 years, the city has made an intentional, it made it intentionally not to be used for, the reason they've stayed away from paving it is they intentionally did not want to include it. So that would be wonderful to include it.
Yeah, at this point, we would not want to take it on because it would be a construction. It wouldn't be a repaving or a rehab because there's no base, so.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's all I have. So meeting adjourned. Thank you all.